We are live. Hello, everybody. This
All right.
week's Axon Q&A. You might notice that there is a face. Robbie Turner is not here. The property specialists have taken over. Welcome, James.
We promise he's fine. He's just he's a little bit busy.
Yeah, just a few different faces. That's all.
Yeah, we haven't done anything nefarious with him. Actually, what Robbie and Tammy are up to is today and over the next couple of days, they're actually attending their training and mentoring. As you know, with property and sourcing property and creating wealth in property, we and the coaches are your mentors to get you through. Robbie and Tammy do the same thing with the business. They aren't the beholder of patient in regards to business. They go and get coaching and mentoring as well. So yeah, Robbie and Tammy are off today and the next couple of days doing, you have us. So as you see, you've got the ability there to ask questions. So I can see people saying already, mostly our crew. Hey, how's it going, mate? Noah and Sophie and Ange, always our big supporters. Rosie Took, hey, no.
Hey, first shout out.
Not quite number one this time, mate, but very close. Well done. We've got Nat there as well. Initially, into any questions, I'm just going to have a chat here. Send the questions through. And over at PNG from 80 Evans. Well, that's a quite a distance. Damo, I'm going to sling it.
Good to see you, mate.
To you first, mate. If we start with you, what have you been seeing in the property specialist space, specifically about the property specialists, noting that there's the three of us on there? Well, everyone else has had their crack and had their turn.
Everyone's had their life.
Who was that for, mate? Was that for me?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Okay. I think the biggest change that we're seeing at the moment is just the availability of blocks of land. Like I've had compared to, and we talked about it on previous Facebook Lives as well, with Robbie and with James the other week as well. Just seeing the relaxing, I guess, and seeing how much more willing the developers are to throw blocks out specifically for investors, whereas before they were closing the doors and keeping it all for the owner occupiers. I actually got an email this morning from one of my clients that had to go through and do the dance and secure his own block sort of through the front door earlier in the year. And he even commented, he's like, now I'm getting all these emails from developers wanting to throw blocks at me. I've already got one. And he's like, don't worry, I haven't done anything else. I haven't gone and got another one, even though it's on the plan down the track.
Yeah.
And then, probably an hour after that, I got sent an email as well from
it is
somewhere else.
It's interesting times, and real estate as a whole doesn't change very quickly in how it operates. But just by virtue of the macro world economic sort of times that we're in, and the increasing of the interest rates is probably a large part of that. There is a lot of uncertainty in the market at the moment. And we have been noticing that in the last probably 4 or 5 months, way back 4 or 5 months to a very small degree, but very much more so in the last month and a half. Whilst it is easing, it is still quite difficult, and especially in the good estates. I think, James, and you'll probably agree as well, that what we see is that the estates that maybe are like lower tier than what we prefer as our tier that we want to put our Axon clients in, that those lower tiers get a little bit easier to get blocks and lots yourself, whereas the top ones are still fairly tight. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you say different tiers. I mean, yes, there are different tiers, but I would also class it as like premium blocks of land where people are living in their own home. They actually want to have the best block, the best views, and they're actually going to be living it and care for it themselves because they're paying for their own mortgage and they build, their own beautiful house, their dream home. And then there's other blocks of land which are not, they're not subpar by any means, but they might be a lot slightly smaller, which are suited to the investor style. So I mean, it's not so much of a priority to spend so much extra dollars on a block of land if you can still get a block of land in the same development, still leverage off all those other, the 7 ingredients and off amazing streets and so on and so on. And then still having to rent your property out without overcapitalizing on the cost. So, the cost of value of building a house to rent is worth it in that sense. It's obviously when we see blocks come back, that's where we do the analysis a lot more. Where a build, a block of land might come back to a developer and it might be registered in, say, 2 weeks' time. And this is where if us three do get the availability of that, we do the analysis, say, well, why did it come back? Has it got an easement? Has it got a sewer line running through it? Is it a corner? Or was it just because somebody fell over with their finance and unfortunately that first buyer wasn't available to do it? So the developers come back to us and say, hey, Axon, can you move it for us? And, that's the importance of where we come into it, right?
Yeah, that's a couple of good, very, very great points there, James. I've actually seen blocks that have come back through the developers.
Yeah.
And on further due diligence, we have on them, or they've even got one where there was a bloody massive power box sitting in a cutout portion of the lot. Or what was another one? I think it was another one that had
like sewer drain, like there's a drain system. Sometimes they have like square drain systems, which are fine. I mean, but they're not as, and this is where we come into play. Like you say, we do the analysis and work out, is the cost of that land worth it? Or if there's going to be a massive power box, yes, we would definitely steer away from that one. But yeah, we do get a couple come back, but that's what we do. So
yeah, that's it. Spot on. We've got a few more people there popping in and saying hello. Semi-win, look out! It's the A team. Oh, you guys are too generous. There it is. There's a comment.
But we'll take it.
We'll take it. Yeah, we're not going to knock it back. Shania says, hey guys, for everyone that's not aware, Shania does make up the 4th person of the property specialist team. And we'll talk a little bit more about what Shania does in the team once we answer some of the other questions there about how we're actually structured. I'd like to talk about that. Axon, who's that? That's probably no one commenting there. Shania rocks. Of course she does. She keeps us in line, keeps us on the straight and narrow.
Doesn't she?
She sure does. Yeah, what we need to do. Good evening, PS, property specialist, Robert Johnston. Evening all. Noah is asking there, James, from you were just talking about before, and it's something I do want to talk about. What are the 7 ingredients that you were referring to just before? You want to just, without going too in depth, just go through those and why we believe that they're important.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us to, to do the analysis on a development, a suburb, dare I say, or even just a region, say North Brisbane, and when we're looking at certain developments within that, we've got to look at what are some of the ingredients that are actually driving the equity growth, the actual population movement into that area. What's also going to be driving the future growth, not just in the immediate sense. So we're not just looking at what's there now and what's being built there now. We are looking at what's going to be built in the next 5, 10, 15, and 20 years' time. Yeah. We're also looking at what's going to be driving the rental market. Is it going to be oversaturated with rentals versus owner-occupiers that keep that balance? But essentially within that, we've got all the analysis when we're talking about education, everything from childcare right up to university level. We've got medical systems, everything again from taking your blood from a pathologist to a medical centre right up to a hospital, both major and minor hospitals. Also, we've got retail. So having shops is obviously important, but not just your local Coles. We want to make sure that, major retail shopping centres as like we've got restaurant scenes, things like that they're really going to be pushing into. One of them being the way of life. The community services. So when we're talking about the community services, it's kind of blended a little bit with master plan communities, which is the 2 as well.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting one. Just to when we talk about master plan communities, that's predominantly what we say, but we also have in our process guide, we then talk about community services as well. master plan and master planned estates are extremely important when we're looking at greenfield estates.
Yeah.
So for people that are not familiar with what greenfield means, it means it's land that has either been rezoned to residential from a different category, or it's just an area that hasn't been built on previously. What we do like to see is that the developers put into what they're going to be putting on the ground there before they start building. We absolutely love getting in the first couple of stages in those estates, just knowing that everything is still coming, like James said, shopping, retail, medical, the transport is there, the community services within that master plan estate. And then the other side of that is that something that we started to see a little bit, probably, I'm going to say maybe 12 to 18 months ago, when everything started getting really tight with like the home builder grant chewing up all of the land, or absorbing all the land that was available within the new estates. We then had to start looking a little bit further broad, widening a little bit, and then we had to look at things that already had community services in place in what is more commonly termed as infill sites. So there's a couple of different elements of those ones. The last two, mate?
I forgot my track. My thought track. What was it? Transportation. So, are we building a massive development in an area that has just one way in and one way out, or are we looking at a highway system that's either already in place, or due to be upgraded, or due to be built out to the development? And again, it's not just road systems; it's everything to train lines, bus services, and so on and so on. And then, like the third order effect of that is distance to larger transportation, such as airports, and, make sure that we're not sitting under a flight line at the same time as well. Yeah. And I think that was it. I think I've covered them all.
Yeah, the last two that sort of roll into each other
do blend together. Yeah, when I'm talking to clients, I do sort of blend them together because they do work hand in hand, don't they? Really, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that you guys were just alluding to just before, with the slight easing and more availability of the land. But it's long-term land supply that we really want to make sure is in our favour. In that we're either up against the ocean, or there's mountain ranges, or there's just a lack of. Like in some places, country Victoria, for example, it's nice and flat, and there's land as far as the eye can see. Granted, it's not zoned for residential, but there is potential that it could be more easily zoned that way. And of course, population growth as well is something that we want very strongly in our favour. Damo, I will get to you with another question, shorter one for you, which relates very closely to that 7 key ingredients. You actually had an interesting question from a client. I'll get to that one in a sec, from Sammy. Thank you. Well, that was fast. Go on. James, you actually had a very interesting question from a client just recently in regards to them requesting a 10 or 20 year forecast for capital growth. Now, and that's what I was actually going to bring that up, but this is actually segued extremely well with the 7 ingredients. Can you talk a little bit about why we don't more year forecast and we more rely on those 7 ingredients?
Absolutely. Well, at the end of the day, we focus on what is going to drive, not how much it's going to drive, because if we know what is going to drive it, the rest will follow and fall into place, right? So those 7 ingredients will drive population growth to that development, or to that area, to that construction, and so on and so on. And what we know is that the master plans plan for in 10 years or in 20 years or whatever it may be, there will be a medical district in X area, and they zone the area off, and nobody will be building on it. Same with residential districts, education. There'll be schools that will be planned in certain areas. So all the residential districts get built first, because at the end of the day, if there's no population growth, no people, nothing else is driving the other demands, right? So what the developers work out is when population equals a certain amount, X, then they'll build a school or upgrade the second school. And then when the residential population equals Y, then they'll upgrades other facilities, and it's what I call the seesaw effect. You've got to have a little bit more population, and then they'll balance it by having some of the other 7 ingredients. So it's consistently going up and down.
Yeah.
So that's where we know what. So what we've also looked at is, if we look at what's happening right now in the economy around the world, let alone Australia, and the RBA increasing rates, and that shifts property prices as such, and also rental returns. So if we look at the past 5 or 6 years in one area, let's just take Sydney for example. The price increase per annum per property might spike to 25% in 1 year, and then 10% the next year, and then it might jump up in the last, for example, in the last 12 months, we've seen a spike in population prices across the country of some places up to about 45%.
Yep.
And these are just unheard of times at the moment. Hence why the RBA balanced the inflation to try and slow that down, because we can't maintain a 45% growth forever. So what we look at is, a standard investment property over the 40-year term should be anywhere between minimum, really what we'd like to see is 4% up to about 7% is a standard average growth.
Yep.
We can't predict that it's ever going to be that. So this is why, essentially, that's the answer to your question, Dave, isn't it? Really, is we look at what's going to be built rather than the numbers, because the numbers will do this, just like my crypto account. Not going down like my crypto account currently at the moment, and most people's share portfolio. But that's essentially why we look at that.
Yeah, spot on, mate. I would love to be able to provide a 10 or a 20-year forecast for capital growth.
Yeah.
And the reason they were asking that was a legitimate reason, because they wanted 2 different areas. To be able to forecast for 2 different areas is near on impossible. The amount of data points you would have to collect.
Crystal ball kind of things, right?
Yeah, it's just crystal balling it.
Yeah, well, I've got a real-time example of that. When I bought my place up in Townsville many years ago, what was that, 2011, 12, something like that?
Yep.
And the people that I bought it through said, here's our projected growth. I'm like, sweet. Well, obviously that looks good, because that's what they wanted to show me, and this is what they expect.
Yeah.
Without really taking into account all of the 7 ingredients that I wasn't aware of back then. So I was like, yeah, cool. If you say it's going to go up this much, sweet. Why wouldn't I buy it?
Yeah.
Fast forward 7-8 years, when the market had dropped right out. Obviously, they didn't forecast for that, because when I ended up selling it for quite a good loss, like a 25% loss, I actually found the spreadsheet that he sent me. I'm like, you should be worth 900,000 now, according to this. But when it's dropped 100 instead, it's
some people, unfortunately, and even just a fairly conservative number, James, like you said, between 4 and 7%, you could expect that to be reasonable. And if a property is increasing at 7% a year, in 10 years, it will double in value. That's the 7 in 10 or the 72 rule, which enables you to calculate that. That would be fantastic, but it can't be applied to every area if it doesn't have exactly what you've just spoken about there, those 7 key ingredients to a healthy property market. If it doesn't have it, then it's probably going to be one of those areas that falls under that 7%. While the 7% is the mean or the average, there's other houses that will grow faster. Areas that don't have those 7 ingredients, they're not going to grow at that rate. So it's not a blanket all over Australia. I would love to, and it'd be great to make it so easy for everyone. Actually, if it was like that, we wouldn't have a job. So maybe it's best that it isn't like that. Thanks for that, James, and Damo. Thanks for being vulnerable and telling us about that.
Let's do it as a real-time event where you unfortunately lost and still have a smile on your face, Damo. I don't know how anyone could do that.
But it's a good lesson if you learn from it. So it's what I can pass on to everyone as well. So
I know that we do actually have clients in pretty much the same boat, Damo, year or 2 years ago that had their Townsville properties as exactly the same thing. So it is unfortunate, but sometimes property for lifestyle reasons, as opposed to investment reasons. But if it's unfortunate. All right, let's do a Sammy Wins question there, Damo. I'll swing to you for this one. Do the
Yep.
developers shoehorn all of the investment properties into the one area of a new stage or a land release, or do they get scattered amongst unoccupied properties?
Yeah, well, they don't want to shoehorn all the investors into the one area. They would rather scatter them out, or rewind 6 months ago, they'd rather have all owner occupiers in there as well.
Yeah.
So they don't put them all in the one spot. They like to have the sort of the scattergun effect and have the owner occupiers taken up the majority of the blocks, and then throw in the investors every now and then. They I guess their reasoning behind that is that they think that the people that live in their own house are going to take better care of it. So if there is some tenants that aren't taking care of their place and letting the grass grow and the trees overgrow and all that, they'll kind of get maybe pulled into line by a bit of social proof that they'll get out there and keep the place looking nice. So I think that's the reason behind that.
It is interesting when we do get early access to stages and we see the eyes have been picked out of it with like the options or the put and calls that builders can take over land to be able to provide to their own market. You see that it is scattered throughout the stages in the estates, or the stages within the estate. And it's also interesting for the estates that actually restrict the number of investors to have that exact same effect as well. Like we have some estates where we're extremely strict in that it's 90% owner occupiers and 10% investors. Actually, in the last 12 months or so, just before we started to see a slight shift, it's been all owner occupiers in some, which makes it extremely hard to source those lots for red-blooded investors, unfortunately. But no, I do like that they do spread them out a bit. Hope that helps there, Sammy.
Yeah.
Axon Property Group says that Shania. I agree. Let's talk about the fourth wheel in the property specialist space. We did talk about Shania a few weeks ago when I was on another one of the QA, or actually it was actually within the Axon the group for one of the masterclasses. I spoke about Shania there as well. But for everyone that's not aware, a couple of months ago, just over 2 months ago, we had Shania join the property specialist team. And actually, in saying full context of how long we've been looking for Shania, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was actually last year, November, December, we were talking about it. And I think we actually looked at a few people then, didn't find that good fit, put it on hold until this year. And then the first few months again into this year, we started looking for that property specialist assistant again. And then finally, 2 and a bit months ago, we found Shania, or Shania found us, whichever way. It was a perfect match, really. It was almost like one of those dating apps. Actually, we did use a group or an employment agency, which we're very, very thankful for. But for everyone's awareness, Shania is an extremely important part of the property specialist team, whereas previously, actually, I'll talk a little bit about the structure that we had previously, the structure we have now, and how Shania fits in that, just to give you a little bit of context in regards to how we change and evolve ourselves, even within Axon as a whole. Up to about 12 months ago, maybe a little bit shorter, or thereabouts, 12 months, we had a totally different structure where we had 3 teams basically, and we're working isolated or in silos, where we had a coach, a property specialist person, all working together in one team, and then the same mirrored in another team, and the same mirrored in a third team. It was working well. There was no issues. There was no major flaws in the system. What we did find, though, was that as we were going through and as we were embedding ourselves within those teams, we did become a little bit isolated from each of the teams, which inadvertently caused a little bit of divergence between processes and systems within. So what we found that even though we did get together all the time and have conversations, we weren't sitting next to each other all the time to be able to, just by osmosis, hear each other speaking to the clients, developers, builders, getting all that information that each of us in our own space was actually bringing in. Also, a little bit of divergence in the education and training that we're providing to everybody, which is in the property specialist space, one of, and I'm sure you'll both agree, one of the most important parts of our process. And I'll talk about, we'll get one of you guys to talk about that in a little bit. So, was it 12 months ago? Or was it?
I'd say it's even a little bit longer, mate.
Maybe a little bit more than 12 months ago. Had a bit of a restructure within Axon, whereas now the property specialists have a group of desks. We sit around there, we do our part, or the coaches have their desk space, they do their part. We do still talk to each other. Any coach can have any property specialist assist them with one particular client. They'll staff that client throughout, but there is no strict, Robbie does this client, Damo supports him. It's now any of the property specialists. And we found that just by virtue of doing that, all of our education, training, and mentoring is solid in that we're not diverging apart from each other. We're not talking about different things. Everything is coming across the same, and we're hitting all those key important parts of information, training, and mentoring that we actually want to get across to everybody. I'll talk about competence and confidence in confidence in a second as well. And then what we were finding, of course, as we were getting another one of the important parts of our property specialist role is to actually engage with our clients either before we found a property with them or after, while they're going through savings. As prices have been increasing, as interest rates have been increasing, it's even more and more important to make sure that people are on top of their savings, to make sure that by the time we get close enough for them to start the finance process, they're actually at a comfortable position. I'll have to throw my hand up. There was times there where instead of doing my every 4-week touch point, I might get a little bit busy one day and go, I'll push that out to next week. And then it might, and then unfortunately sometimes if I was super busy, I see smirk on Damon's face there, we're all guilty of it, I might push it out again. So it ended up being 6 weeks. So one of the extremely important roles that Shania has within the team is conducting those monthly touch points, whether it's a savings update or just a general update for land registrations, letting our clients know how that's happening. So whilst it may seem fairly surface level on the top, if someone isn't conducting their savings, they aren't getting to where they need to be by the time they get to land registration and getting their finance sorted, then 12, 18 months, 2 years of work can fall over, unfortunately, very, very quickly. And also see Caitlin's comment there. Shanghai, which is the unofficial, now official nickname for Shania, is kicking the contracts out of the park as well. So that's another element that Shania has taken. I know I said Shanghai again. That Shania has taken up now within her space there, within the property specialist team, is reviewing the contracts, making sure all the details are correct, so that everything that was in pack presented to the clients is actually in those contracts as well. We do still have the licensing solicitor conduct their review to make sure that the clients are protected legally and everything's above board in that as well. So, Shania, once again, welcome to the team.
Arguably as well, like the contracts are the reason why our touch points and our check-ins and updates from clients were being delayed, because if we were due to do a check-in with, say, Damo from the Gold Coast, the contract comes in and that contract has got a time frame. The developers want it back. They need it back, otherwise they'll just crash it and give it to someone else. So that takes priority, right? Yeah. And I'm sure everyone can understand who's going through that acquisition or been through that acquisition process. If your house or land was to fall over because we prioritize calling Damo from the Gold Coast before doing your contracts, you'd be pretty upset with us. Yeah. So, this is where Shania comes in, and she cracks the whip a few times, and we don't even get to be 1 day overdue now. She sees the little task come up red in our system, and she's like, James, Dave, what's going on with this? Have you done this?
Yeah.
All right. Fine.
Another good thing. Yeah. And having everyone sit nice and close to each other, as Dave was just saying before.
Yeah.
If she's in contact with a particular client, goes, hey, Jonesy just replied to this to me, like straight away you can bounce it off one of us.
Yeah.
We'll jump in if needed. Sometimes it's just a straightforward, yeah, sweet. Thanks for the info. See you next month type of thing. But if there's anything that seems out of the ordinary, then we're straight on it as well, which I think it's rolling pretty smoothly. I think you'd agree.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other elements there as well, it relates a little bit to the contract, but it's much further down the track, is the council approved plans as well. That the board prepares and sends off to the estate for covenant approval, and then the CAP approval. Sometimes there is mistakes, or there are things left out between the contract and the approved plans. So we try to, and this actually relates to one of the questions that Luke Hughes had commented on one of our posts in regards to this being on tonight. He was asking what our process was, and to please let everyone know how much actually goes into the back end of everything we do. And this, what we're talking about now, is all that back end. So making sure that what has been presented in the property presentation has made it into the contracts, the land contracts, and then very importantly into the council. It won't be too often that anything is missed doing that, but it's not that sort of thing that we want to leave to chance or to let just fly through. We do still obviously have the clients as well, because it's in their own best interest to know and understand what has been with Shania. Now she's got that intimate knowledge of what has already tracked, and she obviously leaves notes for herself. We leave notes as we go in the system.
Yeah.
And she's able to check those and make sure it's all the same as well. All right, what else we got there?
Especially with Luke, I'll just add onto that a bit more similar as well. Some of the other stuff that's behind the scenes that's not always seen by our clients, and Luke knows we helped him get his place a little while ago. But there's, keeping track of when the block of land is going to register. If that is going to slide left or right, then that can affect when Deb's going to start her finance process. Yeah. So there's key times that we need to meet, or that we need to keep track of, so that we're not kind of surprised by it when it jumps up on us, so that we've got everything ready to go. There's probably a lot more, like once everyone's secured the block of land and put the house on it and contracts are all done and we're sitting there, it might kind of feel like, from a client's point of view, that, hey, we're not as involved because we're not getting that weekly call with them. We haven't got a property to show them, or even starting back at the process and risk and talking about locations and all the steps they've already been through. So they might feel like, hey, sweet, we've got a property, but there's heaps and heaps of stuff that goes on sort of behind the curtain. And I guess that's one thing that James discovered once he crossed that curtain from client into Axon employee, that he found out all that.
Not just about the property price, and then all of a sudden the house is built, right?
Not anymore.
As been experienced.
It used to be the case, be able to have someone come through, do the process and risks, look at the location, secure property that was registering once or even registered. It'll swing back eventually to where we get on. It might take quite a few years, but at the moment. And Damo, just to add what you said there as well about those land registration updates happening as well. Like we had one that, for everyone's awareness, we have a weekly finance meeting to look at who is in the finance process, who's about to jump into the finance process, where everyone is. And that's large, and that is wholly tied to the land registration. We can't commence finance too early. We were looking at a couple of clients, and they were expected to have their land register in, I believe it was November or October to December. That pushed out to January to March. Unfortunately, it is what it is. We can't control that. The developers, for some elements as well, sometimes it's weather events, rain, that causes that, or it's just council approvals for that stage of the development that holds things up as well. But like you said, Damo, it's important that clients are advised of these, because not everyone is just sitting and working, going through normal, steady, that property or that land are registered before they can commence finance. People are having babies, people are changing jobs, people are discharging from the ADF. We've seen all of those probably today. So,
Yes.
yeah.
New loans.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff going on in people's lives, and it's important they are kept up to date so they know exactly how to manage those things. So extremely important. All right, what else we got there? Got one there from Ange saying that Deb has asked her to send her love as she isn't able to jump on tonight. Thank you, Deb. We love you too. Got a question there from Caitlin from the Gold Coast. How have you been managing, James, I'll get you to answer this one, mate. How have you been managing expectations regarding some clients have received? Increases.
Maybe build price increases.
Yeah.
I would say that would be build price increases.
What a question. So how many times have we dealt with the build price and just the expectations over the last 6 to 9 months? So going back 6 months onwards ago from today, fixed price contract, we better present a property, go, if property's worth through, it's $300,000, for example, and it's fixed price, and we go to build a few months later and we're good to go. But when you've got developments delaying by 6, 9, 12 months, and then like co-founded with what we've called the perfect storm of COVID, material supply shortage, trade issues, inflation, the cost of builds go up significantly in some cases. So the builders cannot build those houses anymore at that price. Otherwise, they are literally building it at a loss. And, one, it's not good for any company to be running at a loss. Or two, you don't want your builder getting halfway through your build and then ending up like Pivotal Homes and BA Murphy and Oracle today, and there's so many builders out there that have been doing it, who have been honouring that fixed price. So I assume, along with the other issues, and at the end of the day, the sacrifice has been the business. And what would you rather, pay an extra $10,000, $15,000 or $12,000, $20,000 for the house that you were originally quoted for 12 months ago? Or would you rather go, put your foot in the ground and go, I'm not changing, and then your builder falls over, and you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. So lately, we have adjusted our processes to give an indicative price to all of our lovely clients about the price of the build and what we foresee it should be. We do make it very clear that it's an indicative price only. All of our builders now, and I would say all builders outside of the excellent space as well, no longer do fixed price contracts.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much outside of a 3-month window. So 3 months from the contract date is when they will reprice, or they'll have a look at the price of the build and say, is it still viable to continue that construction? So what we've been doing is waiting until that 3 to 6 month window before land registration to say, right, builder, let's get a price now for this build for this client. And then, we do a bit of forward projection at the same time to make sure that, to reduce any risk of it moving. And that's how we manage the expectation. Essentially, it's the truth. A number one thing that we've always been open about with everybody, like from Robbie, right from the start with, talking about the business and the model and the pillars, we are always about the truth. Because at the end of the day, that's what I would want if I'm building a house. It's, I want to know if there's going to be a problem, tell me what the problem is and tell me what the solution is. So as far as I'm concerned, a problem isn't a problem if there's a solution. So it's just a step in the process, really, isn't it? So yes, we have had a couple of build price increases post when we're a lot closer to land registration lately, and some of them a bit of been a bit of a shock to some clients. But at the same time, I would say that 95% of our clients have really understood it to say, look, we understand it's happening. We know it's happening. And they have the faith in Axon to say that, okay, well, if it's been through the Axon's filtration process, call it, or done our analysis and our due diligence, then they wouldn't be coming to us if it wasn't the last resort. So, I myself has had, with my house that I'm building at the moment, I've had a build price increase. So I'm feeling, I know you, Dave, you've done the same thing. So we're not exempt from it by any means. It's just, the truth really, and just say how it is. And at the same time as well, we really do fight for the clients, right? Like, it's not just about builder A going, hey, we need an extra $50,000 for this build. And we just go, yeah, sure, pass it on. No, like we do our due diligence again and make sure that is that price rise, is it reasonable? Like, what is encompassed within that? Give us a breakdown. Tell us what's gone up, how much has it gone up by? Where does that $50,000? I'm just plucking a number, of course. Where does that number come from? And that's just that open, honest communication with people down the line, and it's just a conversation piece, really, isn't it? So
so true. I think we're largely through that within the Axon community. I think now, I don't think much more of an issue, just by virtue of what you said about there, James, with that being, we actually get the build contracts, secure the build prices, having those builders which provide the 3 to 6 months worth of fixed price and review prices after. So I think it is going to. I'm sure there are still going to be some reasonable trades and costs in prices. I don't expect them to stop increasing just yet. They have slowed significantly from what we were seeing previously. Land was bitten a little bit more, I think, than some of the southern states. I think largely by being a bit better down south there, and down south already significantly higher build costs prices than what we did see in Queensland. We've been spoiled for quite some time with quite low build prices, and it comes a bit of a shock building at and now slightly above some of the southern states, unfortunately. Do you have a comment there from Paul Kurzgar made with Sia? He's just saying he's agreeing with us there, going broke. So a few reasonable adjustments is probably a good idea, even with a fixed price contract. Crazy, I know.
And we're not just seeing it with the building industry, are we? Really? Like, it's not just the building. It's not just the building industry that we're seeing with these days. It's the cost of living is going up, like the cost to buy a car. Exactly right. Like, you look at the second-hand car prices going up so much because we can't get new cars in because of the logistics of it. And it's exactly the same with the building industry. We can't build a house straight away because the land isn't available. Just like you can't get a car in because there's such a high demand and they're not coming in overseas. So it's just the way the pendulum's shifting with so many aspects of businesses across the country. So getting that.
On that as well, you're seeing built now with less electronics with access to microchips. So they're removing some of those electronic computerized, and they're just reverting back to some of the old ones. I don't think we'll go back to the HQ Holden style anytime soon, but some of the
1965 minis.
Oh,
yeah, that's it. You're spotted that. You're right.
Yeah, that's it. I am. No electronics in that.
Sitting on a gold mine, Damo.
That'd be nice.
Damo, question from you, mate. One there from Luke Hughes. Thanks, Luke, for being
I was going to throw that one your way.
Oh, yeah? Now you can go to mate. Hey, team, are build contracts for single story still 200 days, or are they longer now? Longer relates very well to what we were just talking about.
Yeah, no, they are putting longer for the build days in there, Luke, and for everyone else. It's no point saying, hey, we think we can still build it at 200 or 180 days or whatever, because it's just not going to happen, because they know that there's going to be delays getting things. We've already spoken about the shortages in the trades as well. So they are allowing a lot longer, sort of 10 months and onwards for some of the builds. Just, everyone knows it's going to take that long. Why pretend it's not?
Yeah.
And if everything gets on a good roll and it gets built earlier, everyone's happy. Your tenants in there paying your mortgage earlier. But there's a few stars that need to align for that to happen. So, they're just being reasonable and going, this is how it is.
Yeah, under promise.
Like touching into exactly. And touching into the build support lane there as well. Our build support girls deal with this all the time. Like if they promise 180 or 200 days, but you can have EOTs, then what it's doing is by dragging it out longer and then issuing an extension of time, the administration and the logistics and the justification to say we need longer to build slows it down again even more. It just bogs the system down by more bogging. So, there's so much more churn. So, like you said, Damo, let's not pretend. Let's just tell it what it is. So, yeah.
And there is still some builds that are coming in that early sort of time frame as well. Yeah, it's not out of the question, but it's more the exception than the rule.
Yeah. All right, what other comments we got there? I got one there from Nat as well. Lots of settlements today. Yes, we've had a great amount. Lots of celebrations. Angie, big shout out. You all care so much about our clients and also office. Super fun to work with too. Angie, you keep us on our toes. Chris Williams, evening all. How's it going, mate? And Angie, everything is going up, including rent. Actually, rent's something that is near and dear to hearts. I had a rent increase. I rent where I live at the moment. I'm a rent investor, red-blooded investing where I want to live. Unfortunately, I had a $100 a week rental increase just recently for my last renewal. I'm sad to pay it, but I'm willing to pay it because it means I get to live where I want to live. And it's me a few $1,000s to move anywhere, and then the style and quality of the house I have now, I would be paying far above what I'm actually paying. My landlord isn't watching. I would be paying far above where I'm able to live here. So it's a real thing, but at the same time, us as investors, you as investors as well, you want to be charging fair market rent. You don't want to be stuck. Well, I'll tell you that. No. You don't want to be having an investment property that's under market rent. You want it to be fair, and you don't want to be tenants. You don't want to be going too hard, but it does have to be fair for you and for the tenant at the same time. I have put my rents up in a couple of my places, but we have seen interest rate rises over the last 6 to 8 months or so. Unfortunately, we actually, from our office window, we witnessed homeless today. I'm not sure how long the people that we saw had been homeless, but there was some people down in the car park level side of our office that had been living in some tents under some shelter from some trees. Unfortunately, the owner of that lot of land has a car park on it. Didn't want them there anymore, so they had a contract come down, which exposed them, and I'm sure they'll be moved on soon by the authorities, which is unfortunate, but it does hide the issues that we do see with the rental market at the moment. But as long as you're fair and equitable with the rents that you should, as an investor, be able to sleep at night.
Yeah.
Good point. So Justin had a question. I think that's probably on the back of what I was talking about, fixed price contracts before. How are the banks approving loans when you don't have a fixed price contract? So I will elaborate. I may have worded that a bit incorrectly, Justin. So they do have it is worded as a fixed price contract, but it's not confirmed with it until it's within a certain time frame. So, for example, some of our builders have a 3-month time frame when they'll fix it. Anything outside of that, they won't fix the price. It's an indicative price only. So hence why I was saying that we're waiting until about 3 months or so from land registration to say, right, let's do the contracts, because then the builder is comfortable putting their left and righty on the line and saying, yes, we're happy to build this house at this price. On top of that as well, what we have seen lately, Dave, if you want to talk about this more after, is some of the builders, well, most of our builders now are putting in special conditions for potential rises in the build price during a certain time frame. So one of them, we've got a 5% escalation clause within a contract. So the builder, do you want to talk about that one, Dave? About where the builders look after
that one is,
and also the client at the same time.
Yeah, it's actually one of the very best, one of the best clauses that I've seen in a build contract is that it limits the amount of the builder. So you get your fixed price for a certain, and then after that they say that as long as, or if prices, trades, materials have gone up more than 1%, increase the price of your build or the cost of your build by that amount. And they can do that a couple of times until we get to land, we say, a finance phase, but they also limit it at 5% aggregate. So if they get some increases to frames and dollars, they can do that. If something else, the slabs up by another 5 or 10, they can add that on there, but they limit themselves, or they can in total of the build price. So it does prevent, it makes them to accurately estimate during that shorter time frame, but then it also limits them so they don't just go, right, let's pause on there for shits and giggles, for example. They actually do look at the numbers, and they do it quite well. So yeah, we have clauses like that that not only protect the clients, but it protects the builder as well. So, as we spoke about, continue to be able to these amazing houses for everybody.
Yeah, it's probably a bit of insight as well. That someone that lives and breathes and has to price things and sort of allow for the increases to happen, that they might see something on the horizon that it's starting to even itself out as well.
Yeah. Cool. Well, hopefully that answers the question or clears what I was saying up before, Justin. What have we got? Another 7 more minutes. So get your questions out now, guys, if there are any that you're thinking about whilst we've been talking about the sum. We're 7 minutes. So yeah, write them out.
Got another question.
Dave.
More of a comment there. Luke, he's saying that his property pack was that we estimated at the time for when that property was going to be available for rent. It's just listed $130 a week. So some sites for all. When we do prepare our numbers to present to everybody, we do anything that's income coming in for the property. We'll take the lowest number of dollars in that case. We might have thought we could get 420 or 430, but the worst case scenario, we'll always choose the lowest number. So things like expenses, insurances, and rates, we'll try and pick a high to get that worst case. So 400 to 530 is an extremely good jump.
I think the word you're looking for, Dave, there is conservative, right?
Yes, conservative. That's our keyword.
For a bit more context, Luke's was about 2 years ago as well.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. Jen Gala, thanks for your question there. How much of a rent increase do you think is reasonable? It's hard to say. When you already have tenants in the property, like for me, $100 a week jump was bloody massive. I thought it was, I'm still willing to pay it. It's a better option than moving house, that's for sure. But between a tenant leaving and new tenants moving in, and it goes out to the market, feel free through your property managers with us, through discussions with the build support team, to have it at market rent. If that's then $100 a week jump, I think that is, if it's going in at what all the other prices of the houses are in the market for as well. And as you know from our risk management plan, we tend to look at something that's 10, or we tend to market the properties or list the properties at $10 or $20 a week less than what's the rest of the property. That way you're going to get all of the applications for the area, and then you get to choose the very best tenant for your property as well. If you try and hit the market or go slightly above, you're going to get less applications and you're going to get less quality people to choose from. So even in these very tight markets, I'm still looking to go $10 or $20 under the actual market. That way, get the very best opportunity to pick the very best tenants for long term as well. If you've got someone with school-age children, generally don't want to move into an area and then a year or two, they're generally there for the longer term. So you try and look after them.
I had the same thing recently, didn't I, Dave and Damo? Like where I had my tenant, my first property, they signed a 2-year lease, which was fantastic, and I knew what would happen with the rental market, so I was sort of undercutting myself because I knew the market would go up in that 2 years, but it was fixed at that price. So, you know, my house was rented for $440 a week for 2 years, and in that 2 years, it went from $440 a week to $580 a week. So when the lease was due to renewal recently, I was like, man, I don't want to be raising the price that much for my amazing tenants. So I picked the lowest rental price point, and then I still went $30 under again that, because that was the price that I wanted to. I was happy to make that cut, so to speak, to have my tenants stay in the house because they've been amazing to the property. They've always paid on time. They've always looked after it, and that's what I'm happy. I don't need that top dollar, and I don't want to be chasing, you know, just for something for greed and put a family out in the under the tree, as we've recently seen in the streets. So yeah.
And it's another good point as well. That's why we've got Angie on board. So when people are in between tenancies, or you know, someone's going to move out, definitely get in touch, get in contact with whoever, and we'll get you in touch with Angie to discuss that with her experience in the real estate industry. I think she's invaluable for all the people that have dealt with her so far. So if that's going to be you pretty soon, Jen, definitely get in touch.
Yeah. Thanks, Damo. I actually forgot to mention Angie there. She is the master of that space. Many year industry, and now working exclusively within Axon. We were able to get her into our team, looking after client relationship, looking at everyone's rentals, making sure that all the renewals are at the making sure it's fair for everyone. So that's awesome. Cool. All right. We've only got 5 minutes to go. Damo, you got any final talk? Anything else you want to add?
Oh, it's been fun. Long time listener, first time caller for me. So good to get on the crack, and instead of just sitting back here and eating my wings for dinner and watching you guys talk about it all, it's been good to get out there and answer everyone's questions as well.
Yeah, we've had a couple of good questions tonight.
Yeah, good questions. Yeah. I love it. Yeah, James, anything else for you, mate?
No, happy. Really got the cogs turning tonight with a couple of these questions. So thanks very much. We like I said, guys, but when you're in our space, so to speak, when your property is being presented to land settlement, I think Damo touched on it before. You know, it may seem a bit quiet for a while, but there is a lot of things happening behind the scenes. So I think that's probably the key thing. And reach out to us, because you know, no news is good news. But if you want to know something, if you want to keep up to date with something, by any means, like, just let us know, and we're more than happy to tell Shania to do that. No, I'm only joking. No. So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Angel's just chucked an email address up there if anyone needs to.
Thanks, Damo. Thanks, James. I see Jen there. We'll be getting a reassessment of the area for our current rental and looking at reasonable increase. So hoping your second property gets finished soon. Don't we all? It's always an exciting time when properties are. Well, it's like a little bit of hurt space, or you've got the sort of interest in yourself before you get tenancy. It's always exciting. Angie has left her email there, angie@axonproperty.com.au. So if you do have questions specific to what you're trying to achieve, then please give her a call. Give her an email. And we are almost on time. So hopefully everyone, thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you got something from tonight as well.
See ya.